This is TWiT.
Last Thursday, Meredith Whittaker, who we've spoken of before, she's Signal's CEO president, and of course, she's whom we saw first stand up to the UK with their absolute refusal to compromise on Signal's encryption, along with a lead developer, Joshua Lund, authored a lengthy fundraising wake-up call in the form of a breakdown of their expenses, of Signal's expenses. Now, while they're a registered 501c3 nonprofit organization, they maintain a staff of 50 busy people. And actually, when we put this in context, as I will a little bit later here, it's shocking that it's only 50 for when you consider how much these 50 people are doing. And they also describe their significant infrastructure costs. And there are another few surprises that I'll share because I'm going to kind of pick and choose among this very long posting. But I'll share the beginning of it to give everyone a sense for what they're aiming for here. It starts out under the headline, "Privacy is priceless, but Signal is expensive." And they write, "Signal is the world's most widely used truly private messaging app, and our cryptographic technologies provide extra layers of privacy beyond the Signal app itself. Since launching in 2023, so, we're now 10 years out, the Signal protocol, our end-to-end encryption technology, has become the de facto standard for private communication, protecting the contents of billions of conversations in WhatsApp, Google Messages, and many others. Signal also continues to invest in research and development in the pursuit of extending communications privacy. This commitment underlies our recent work to add a layer of quantum resistance to the Signal protocol, which we talked about a few weeks ago, and our previous work on metadata protection technologies that help keep personal details like your contact list, group membership, profile name, and other intimate information secure. This singular focus on preserving the ability to communicate privacy is one reason that we work in the open, documenting our thinking and making our code open source and open to scrutiny, so you don't have to take our word for it. Signal is also a nonprofit, unlike almost every other consumer tech company. This provides an essential structural safeguard, ensuring that we stay true to our privacy-focused mission. To put it bluntly, as a nonprofit, we don't have investors or profit-minded board members knocking during hard times, urging us to, quote, sacrifice a little privacy, unquote, in the name of hitting growth and monetary targets. They don't have any growth and monetary targets. This is important, they said, in an industry where free, and they have that in air quotes, free consumer tech is almost always underwritten by monetizing surveillance and invading privacy. Such practices are often accompanied by growth hacking and engagement maximization techniques that leverage dark patterns to keep people glued to feeds and notifications. While Signal is also free to use, we reject this kind of manipulation, focusing instead on creating a straightforward interpersonal communications app. We also reject business models that incentivize such practices. Instead of monetizing surveillance, we're supported by donations, including a generous initial loan from Brian Acton. Our goal is to move as close as possible to becoming fully supported by small donors, relying on a large number of modest contributions from people who care about Signal. We believe this is the safest form of funding in terms of sustainability, ensuring that we remain accountable to the people who use Signal, avoiding any single point of funding failure, and rejecting the widespread practice of monetizing surveillance. And finally, but our nonprofit structure doesn't mean it costs less for Signal to produce a globally distributed communications app. Signal is a nonprofit, but we're playing in a lane dominated by multi-billion-dollar corporations that have defined the norms and established the tech ecosystem and whose business models directly contravene our privacy mission. So in order to provide a genuinely useful alternative, Signal spends tens of millions of dollars every year. And they finished with this intro. We estimate that by 2025, Signal will require approximately $50 million a year to operate. And this is very lean compared to other popular messaging apps that do not respect your privacy. Okay, so then their blog post proceeds from there to substantiate that claim and to further detail the nature of their current cash outlay for all facets of what it takes to make Signal go. I've got a link in the show notes for anyone who's interested, signal.org/blog/signal-is-expensive.
You know, it's interesting because this ties in. She wrote this before the OpenAI kerfuffle of the past weekend, but it ties in very much to that because OpenAI was founded to be a nonprofit like Signal. But it got so expensive, they had to create a for-profit arm. And really what you're seeing is the tension between the for-profit, very, very successful OpenAI, and the not-for-profit AI should be, not run by a big profit-making company arm. And look who won. It's amazing that Signal can survive at that run rate.
And we're about to hear some gloom and doom from me.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm not a big Signal user, though I do have it installed on my phone and desktop because back when I was bringing up GRC's Zenforo web forums, one of our listeners, Rasmus Vind, who knew Zenforo and PHP, came to my rescue and implemented the forum's interface to Squirrel, which, by the way, remains in heavy use today, and it's the way most of our forum users log on, I've been told. So Rasmus suggested that we use Signal to converse in real time, and it worked perfectly. But I have to admit that I never even stopped to consider the fact that Signal was both free and devoid of any annoying advertisements or other nonsense. And in thinking about it, I realize that we've become very accustomed to receiving free things in our lives.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah. And I have free in air quotes because something pays for the things we receive. We grew up, those of us with thinning or gray hair, listening to free AM and FM radio and watching free television, all sprinkled with ads. And today, it's still possible to get lots of high-quality free stuff if you don't mind ads, like this podcast, GRC's various services like Shields Up, and our growing library of ad-free freeware on a 100% ad-free website is entirely financed by the sales of SpinRite.
See, that's interesting because, it's one thing for you to write a program and then distribute it, but you've got ongoing costs with Shields Up. You've got to run a server all the time. Yeah, that's it. But you don't show ads.
It's 100% financed by SpinRite sales.
But I would say, by the way, that is not really the case. It's 100% financed by Steve Gibson, who happens to have an income thanks to SpinRite.
That's a good point.
You're really paying for it. It's out of your pocket. Yeah.
That is the case. We have 8,661,248 people this morning, or as of this morning, who have downloaded and used our DNS benchmark. Shields Up is beyond 101 million uses. 68,000 people have downloaded ValiDrive since it was released. All these people received something of value for free, but only because a sufficient number of other people have been interested in having access to SpinRite and were willing to pay for it. So Google exists because of advertisements and extensive tracking. The TWiT network and this podcast are here thanks to advertisements and the direct support of Club TWiT members. And all of the stuff I've been able to do, create, and give away is thanks to people purchasing SpinRite. But what of Signal? What we're living in now is an attention economy where commercial interests are vying for and are willing to pay dearly for people's attention, but not Signal. It occurs to me, and I really hope I'm wrong, that this is going to be a heavy lift and that they're probably in a very tough spot. For all the best and right reasons, they've put themselves in the spot of needing to ask for voluntary donations from a global community that's grown accustomed to getting everything for free, or at least apparently for free. In other words, not needing to directly part with any of their hard-earned cash. So how will Signal support itself? Can it support itself? It'll be up to those who use it and who depend upon its integrity, or perhaps other wealthy donors who want to see it survive, to keep it going. Do most people actually care? And this is the question. Do most people actually care about the integrity of their messaging service? I have come to doubt it. It's fine if it's there for free, but will they pay for it? Will its users even understand the value that they're receiving in return? Or is it just a convenient messaging app that they're using without really understanding what's behind it and what it takes to offer such a service with absolutely no strings attached? And that's what differentiates it from everything else. Signal is 100% absolutely no strings attached. Elsewhere in their blog, they write, "Data is profitable, and we're a nonprofit focused on collecting as little data as possible. Most tech companies collect and create as much data as they can. They build large data warehouses and then later invent new terms like data lake when their unquenchable thirst for more of your private information can no longer fit within the confines of a single warehouse. Their default move is to store everything for as long as they can in an easily accessible and unencrypted format, suffering data breach after data breach after data breach, hoping to monetize this data by indirectly or directly selling it to advertisers or using it to train AI models. Again, data is profitable." They noted that their data storage costs are far less than other messaging companies, specifically because, unlike everyone else, they only retain the barest minimum needed for the system to function. And it's been designed from front to back not to store anything that it doesn't need to. Now, one of the surprising line items they highlighted was the cost of registration. Get a load of this. They said, Signal incurs expenses when people download Signal and sign up for an account, or when they re-register on a new device. We use third-party services to send a registration code via SMS or voice call in order to verify that the person in possession of a given phone number actually intended to sign up for a Signal account. This is a critical step in helping to prevent spam accounts from signing up for the service and rendering it completely unusable, a non-trivial problem for any popular messaging app. Signal's registration service routes registration codes over multiple telephony providers to optimize delivery across the globe, and the fees we pay to third-party vendors for every verification code we send can be very high. This is in part, we believe, because legacy telecom operators have realized that SMS messages are now used primarily for app registration and two-factor authentication in many places, as people switch to calling and texting services that rely on non-telecom internet data. In response to increased verification traffic from apps like Signal and decreased SMS revenue from their own customers, these service providers have significantly raised their SMS rates in many locations, assuming correctly that tech companies will have to pay anyway. The cost of these registration services for verifying phone numbers when people first install Signal or when they re-register on a new device currently averages around $6 million per year.
Wow.
Leo, that's like an eighth of their budget or a seventh of their total budget.
Yeah.
Or a sixth. It's astonishing. And just think of all the people who might download and then set up the app, then wind up not using it that much. My phone is chock full of such apps.
Right.
Well, why would I pay for anything, for something that I never use? Yet they're footing the cost of my sign-up verification, whether I ever use it again or not. Another thing I appreciated is how lean they're running. They have 50 employees total. How does this compare to other similar services? They wrote, Signal is not a collection of privacy-preserving services that route end-to-end encrypted messages and calls around the world. That is, it isn't just that. It's also a set of cross-platform apps and modular development components, libraries, that make this type of private communication possible in the first place. Because the norm is surveillance, we're often required to create or modify our own libraries from scratch, swapping in privacy instead of using more common frameworks that assume surveillant defaults. Swimming against the tide of an ecosystem whose incentives and infrastructure promote surveillance and privacy invasions is, of course, more time-intensive and more expensive and requires dedicated and experienced people. First, we have 3 distinct client teams, one for each platform, Android, desktop, and iOS. These teams are constantly working, adjusting to operating system updates, building new features, and making sure the app works on a wide variety of devices and hardware configurations. We also have dedicated engineering teams that handle the development and maintenance of the Signal server and all its infrastructure, our calling libraries like Ring RTC and core libraries like LibSignal. These also need constant development and monitoring. Product and design teams help shape the future of the app and determine how it will look and function, while our localization team coordinates translation efforts across more than 60 languages. We even have a full-time in-house support group that interfaces with people who use Signal and provides detailed technical feedback and real-time troubleshooting information to every other team. This is an essential function, particularly at Signal, because we don't collect analytics or telemetry data about how people are using Signal. So otherwise we would never know. This is a lot of work, and we do it with a small and mighty team. In total, around 50 full-time employees currently work on Signal, a number that is shockingly small by industry standards. For example, Line Corporation, the developers of the Line messaging app popular in Japan, has around 3,100 employees, while the division of Kakao Corp that develops Kakao Talk, a messaging app popular in Korea, has around 4,000 employees. Employee counts at bigger corporations like Apple, Meta, and Google's parent company Alphabet are much, much higher. Of course, they're also doing lots of other things. And the last bit that I wanted to share is this. They wrote, growth in Signal translates into increased infrastructure costs, and having more infrastructure requires more labor. As of November 2023, today, this month, Signal's server network is regularly responding to around 100,000 requests per second, and we routinely break our previous records. A funny thing happens when a globally accessible service starts handling billions of requests every day. Suddenly, 1 in a million possibilities are no longer unique or rare, and unlikely situations become more and more common as Signal grows. It's not unusual for our engineers to do things like write custom code to reproduce an esoteric and complicated IPv6 connectivity issue that's affecting people running an arcane operating system configuration in specific regions, but only when connected via a certain set of internet service providers. Troubleshooting such infrastructure issues can be very expensive, but isolating a problem and developing a fix can take a lot of time and expertise. So, okay, when I opened the app just now, I found a request for a donation. Clicking the donate button took me to a screen which read, "Privacy over profit, private messaging funded by you, no ads, no tracking, no compromise. Donate now to support Signal." And then there was an option to read more. Having read everything I just had, I decided I would give them some money. So I selected an amount and was taken to a screen that said, "Donate to Signal, get the Signal Boost badge." And the payment options were Apple Pay, debit or credit card, or PayPal. It'll be interesting to see whether a user-supported secure messaging system is an oxymoron. Can such a system support itself? I have no idea whether a sufficient number of users will step up and pay, and on the ongoing basis that Signal requires, to use a miraculously secure and clean service that's truly free in every sense of the word. I'm not inclined to pay continuously because I don't use it on a regular basis. I am a continuing supporter of Wikipedia because I do often use it. My fear, based upon everything I've seen, is that people do not appreciate and probably cannot appreciate what Signal is, and that they use it because among all of the other free messaging services, they can see that it's the cleanest and totally free of debris. But they have no idea why. The problem is that being totally debris-free is an expensive service for Signal to deliver. I'm glad they took the time to explain their financial reality. Those of us here get it. But most Signal users will never see their posting, and without that posting, that donate button at the bottom of Signal's screen doesn't pack nearly the same punch. And Leo, I think that your immediate reaction is probably the right one. It's like, it's been nice knowing you.
I don't know. We should point out, you mentioned Brian Acton is the CEO. He was the founder of WhatsApp, sold it to Facebook for $19 billion. He's worth, it's estimated, $2.5 billion. I suspect it's Brian and a few other well-situated donors that have been keeping it going. It'll be interesting to see if, obviously no one wants to pay $50 million a year forever, even if you're a $2.5 billionaire. It'll be interesting to see if they can get people to donate. I do think, and we've talked about this on our other shows, we are coming to the end of the free internet. We all knew it couldn't hold forever, right?
Well, we were all wondering why it held at all.
How could it be free?
Like for how many years were we hearing that Twitter's losing money, but they're going to make it up in volume? It's like, what?
Yeah, and I think the crunch has come. And I don't think look, we're in the same position. Ad sales have dropped way off. Podcasting, which was the Fairhead Boy, no longer is with advertisers. They quite understandably want to go where they can get more information about who's watching. So they buy YouTube, and they buy Google, and they buy Facebook because they like that information about you. And so because we have very limited ability to track you, podcasts in general are much less attractive. That's why we've, make a big deal about Club TWiT and invite you to join and support us and stuff. And we have to date 8,322 paid members, which is great. Not enough to keep us on the air. We're doing some sort of hybrid thing. But it's a big crunch. And so, I just don't know if people have, people talk about subscription fatigue. I understand nobody wants to pay $7 here, $5 here. But donation, I got to tell you, we used to do donation. We started, I thought the whole thing will be donation based. You remember that because you were there. And we'd get about $8,000 a month. It wasn't enough to pay a salary, let alone, a whole team.
Yeah. Yeah, and one thing I did note that I didn't put in the show notes is that Tor remains more than half supported by the U.S. government.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Yeah. And,
why would they support that?
it is curious, although the half of support is way less expensive. It's like $1.3 million or something. So, the Tor project is not the same as Signal by any means, just in terms of scale.
Well, I imagine most Tor servers are self-funded, right? They volunteer. Yeah. So it's a really interesting. Yeah. We're in an interesting time.
I sort of wanted to, we are. I wanted to put that on everyone's map, just, to make sure they knew about Signal, where it stands, that it is, it is unique in the industry, and I wish them luck. I just don't have an occasion to need Signal. Rasmus and I haven't talked in a long time, and iMessage is fine, and I buy an iPhone, and that apparently underwrites iMessage. So,
yeah, I mean, honestly, the people who most need it, the dissidents and so forth that do need it, probably have no means to pay for it.
Right.
So really, the donations are to support that, I guess.
Yeah, and that's why I think the more reasonable solution is the benefactor. They would like to have, as they said, a stable income source from many small donations, but I just, I don't know. And as I said, Leo, I don't know why people chose it, except that it's the best one. It's clean and no ads. But does anyone really know about Signal or care? If they tried to make it a subscription, people would leave. They just go, to one of the other free things that is, not actually as free as Signal truly is.
Mm-hmm. This episode of Tech Break is brought to you by our friends at IT Pro TV, now called ACI Learning. 94% of CIOs and CISOs agree that attracting and retaining talent is increasingly critical. Invest in your workforce and keep their IT skills current with ACI Learning. Visit go.acilearning.com/twit. Twit listeners can receive up to 65% off an IT Pro Enterprise Solution Plan after completing their form. Based on your team's size, you'll receive a properly quoted discount tailored to your needs.